You make the brave decision to heal. You start therapy. You set boundaries. You face your past. Then, something shocking happens. You feel profoundly worse. The sadness deepens. Old anger erupts. Anxiety tightens its grip. This cruel twist makes you question everything. Wasn't healing supposed to feel good? Carl Jung unveiled the unsettling paradox at the heart of transformation. True healing is not a gentle smoothing over of cracks. It is a radical excavation. To mend a fractured bone, it must first be rebroken and set correctly. To heal the psyche, you must consciously re-enter the very wounds you spent a lifetime trying to escape. The comforting numbness of staying broken is being replaced by the acute, necessary pain of feeling everything. This is not a setback. It is the process. The darkness you are feeling is not the absence of healing. It is the signature of its real, difficult work. Consider the psychological wound not as a fresh cut, but as an old, poorly set fracture. The body, in its desperate wisdom, has grown calcified tissue around the break. It has fused, but it is crooked. This malformed growth is your coping mechanism, your armor, your addiction, your people-pleasing, your perfectionism. It provides a stiff, fragile stability. It allows you to function, albeit with a persistent limp. This is the false peace of staying broken. The pain is a dull, familiar racha, a background noise you have learned to call normal. To truly heal, you must consent to have this calcified structure dismantled. The initial agony of that demolition feels catastrophic because your entire adaptive system, your very sense of normalcy, is being declared the problem. The familiar ache was a prison, but it was your prison, and its walls feel safer than the terrifying open space of raw, unfiltered reality. For decades, you survived by turning down the dimmer switch on your own awareness. You numbed, distracted, and rationalized to keep the full truth of your pain in shadow. The first act of healing is to flood that room with light. This is not a gentle sunrise. It is the sudden glare of surgical lamps. Every detail you avoided is now horrifically visible. The shape of the betrayal, the depth of the neglect, the contours of your own complicity. This light feels violent. Your instinct is to slam your eyes shut, to retreat to the familiar dark. The courage to heal is found in keeping them open, in allowing your consciousness to finally, fully witness what happened. The pain of this seeing is immense, because you are not just remembering an event, you are feeling, for the first time, all the emotions you were too small or too scared to process when it actually occurred. Healing requires an impossible mourning. You must grieve for the person you could have been, had the wound never happened. These lost self with their native confidence, their easy trust, their unfettered joy, is a ghost you must now bury. Every step forward is a step away from the life that was stolen from you. This grief is a double agony. You mourn the original injury and you mourn the lifelong adaptation that followed. Letting go of your protective coping mechanisms, even the harmful ones, can feel like abandoning a loyal, if misguided, friend who kept you alive. This process is not clean. It is a messy, howling funeral for a version of you that never got to live. The broken state offered the hollow comfort of deferred grief. Healing demands you finally pay that debt, with interests and a currency of tears you thought had all dried up. Your body is the archive of everything your mind chose to forget. When you begin to heal, the mind's repression orders are countermanded. The body seizes this chance to speak. Stored trauma held as frozen energy in your nervous system and tissue. Behin's tu tau. This can manifest as overwhelming panic attacks, unexplained aches, waves of nausea, or a trembling you cannot control. It feels like your biology is betraying you. In truth, it is finally communicating. The numbness of being broken was a physiological lockdown, a survival freeze. The acute, frightening sensations of healing are the thaw, the proof that feeling is returning to a limb that was psychologically empty. It is messy, dysregulating, and terrifying. Your body is not falling apart. It is conducting a symphony of release, and every discordant note is a fragment of your story fighting its way to the surface to be heard. As you begin to heal, every relationship in your life becomes a mirror, and the reflection is often brutal. The people you attracted from a wounded place now feel intolerable. Their behaviors, which you once accepted, now feel like sandpaper on your raw nerves. This is not them changing. This is your tolerance for inauthenticity and dysfunction evaporating. Simultaneously, you may find yourself momentarily regressing, acting out old patterns with shocking intensity. This is the psyche's way of showing you the script one last time, in high definition, so you can truly see the role you are leaving. This phase feels like losing your social world. It is, in fact, the painful, necessary recalibration of your entire relational universe. You are not ruining your connections. You're upgrading the foundation they are built upon, and the construction site is always a place of temporary chaos and dust. Your brokenness, for all its pain, provided a perverse sense of identity. I am the victim. I am the anxious one. I am the people pleaser. These are crippling labels, but they are labels. They tell you who you are and how to navigate the world. Healing begins to strip these titles away. You are left standing before a terrifyingly blank canvas, without the old story of your wounds to define you. Who are you? This existential freefall can feel worse than the suffering itself. The known hell is often preferred to the unknown heaven. The agony here is the death of a familiar self, even if that self was built on pain. You are being asked to trade a well-known prison for an undiscovered country, and the voyage between them requires sailing through a storm of pure, undefined possibility. Jung taught that what we repress gains power in the unconscious, forming the shadow. When you consciously decide to heal, you open the gates to this hidden domain. The qualities you buried, your rage, your neediness, your selfishness, your despair, do not emerge politely. They erupt. You may experience waves of irrational anger, bouts of childish dependency, or depressive lows that seem to come from nowhere. This feels like backsliding, as if your healing is summoning demons. In reality, these are not demons. They're disowned citizens of your own psyche, demanding asylum. The broken state kept them safely locked away. The healing state grants them parole. Their chaotic outbursts are not a failure of the process. They are the process. Integration is not a peaceful picnic. It is a tense, often messy negotiation with the parts of yourself you exiled to survive. Carl Jung drew a critical distinction between neurotic suffering, the pointless, repetitive agony of unconscious wounds, and necessary suffering, the conscious, meaningful pain of transformation. Healing feels worse because you are voluntarily moving from the former into the latter. Jung saw this conscious suffering as the sacred fire of the alchemical vessel. You are no longer blindly enduring pain. You are intentionally submitting to its heat to be transmuted. This shift is everything. The old suffering was a prison you inhabited. Jung's necessary suffering is a forge you enter. It burns away the dross of your defenses. The intensity is not a sign you are failing. It is the measurable heat required to melt the rigid structures of your old self, so your gold, your authentic nature, can begin to flow and take a new, more genuine form. At the heart of your brokenness, Jung would locate a complex, a knot of emotions, memories, and perceptions organized around a core wound. This complex acts like a psychic parasite, sucking energy and autonomy from your conscious life. When you begin to heal, you stop feeding this complex your energy. In response, it rages. It throws every old memory, every triggering thought, every familiar feeling of worthlessness at you in a desperate bid for survival. Jung taught that this furious backlash is the complex's death throes. The excruciating pull you feel back into old narratives is not you. It is the complex fighting for its life. Healing requires you to sit in this storm, witnessing the tantrum of this psychic entity without obeying its commands. A process Jung called conscious suffering, which slowly drains the complex of its autonomous power. A cornerstone of Jungian healing is the withdrawal of projections. In your broken state, you likely projected your own disowned qualities, your inner critic, your unmet needs, your hidden power, onto others. Healing demands you take these projections back. This is a devastatingly lonely undertaking. The people you blamed for your pain begin to look like ordinary humans. The saviors you waited for lose their magic. You are left alone with the stark reality of your own psyche, now crowded with all the parts you had assigned to external actors. Jung called this the opus contra naturam, the work against nature, for it goes against our instinct to locate the problem outside ourselves. The acute loneliness and disorientation you feel is the price of reclaiming your wholeness. The well becomes emptier, but you become more real, carrying the full weight of your own story for the first time. Jung described the core of the healing process as the Nikia, or the Night Sea Journey, the mythic descent into the underworld of the unconscious. This is not a metaphor, it is your lived experience, the deepening depression, the pervasive sense of being lost in inner darkness, the encounter with terrifying dream figures. This is the journey. Healing feels worse because you are no longer safely on the shore of conscious control. You're in the belly of the whale, being digested by the very pain you sought to heal. Jung insisted this descent is non-negotiable. To find the treasure, the new consciousness, you must first confront the dragon that guards it. Your darkest moments are not a wrong turn. They are the central leg of the voyage. The comfort of brokenness was the safety of the familiar port. The agony of healing is the turbulent, essential crossing to a new land. Jung revealed that psychic illness is often a state of war between irreconcilable opposites within. Spirit versus instinct, goodness versus rage, dependence versus independence. Your broken state was a fragile truce, where one side dominated and the other was repressed. Healing activates the civil war. You feel torn apart because you are. The conscious process of holding these opposites in tension, without fleeing to one extreme, is what Jung saw as the engine of growth. It feels like being psychologically ripped in two. This intolerable tension is the forge where a third, transcendent position is born. The peace you will eventually find is not the silence of a rended war, but the dynamic, vibrant harmony of a psyche that has integrated its conflicts into a greater whole. The pain is the sound of old, simplistic ways of being breaking apart. Your ego, the manager of your conscious life, has one agenda: control and stability. It built your broken coping mechanisms to achieve this. Healing is orchestrated by a deeper authority, what Jung termed the self, the central archetype of wholeness. The self's agenda is integration and completeness, not comfort. To achieve this, it will ruthlessly dismantle the ego's fragile structures. The ego experiences this as annihilation. The depression, the lost identity, the crumbling defenses are all symptoms of the self asserting its superior claim on your life's direction. The fight between your ego's desire for a familiar misery and your self's demand for an unknown wholeness is the central battle of healing. The pain is the friction of two powerful psychic systems grinding against each other as the governance of your soul changes hands. Jung taught that within every man lies an inner feminine dimension, the anima, and within every woman, an inner masculine, the animus. In a wounded state, these figures are often negative, causing moody passivity or harsh, opinionated rigidity. As you heal, you are forced to consciously encounter and relate to this inner other. For a man, this can mean being flooded with unfamiliar vulnerability and emotion that feels dangerously weak. For a woman, it can mean confronting an inner voice of fierce, logical criticism that feels brutally cold. This encounter is deeply it shatters your comfortable gender identity and demands you integrate qualities you were taught to reject in yourself. The chaos and confusion this brings feels like a loss of your very essence. Yet, for Jung, this difficult integration is vital, for it grants you access to your full creative and relational potential, moving you beyond the limitations of a half-lived life. A terrifying part of healing is the experience of regression, feeling childlike, needy, and incapable. From a Jungian view, this is not a failure. Bataracular, pour mieux. Satire stepping back to take a better leap. The psyche is returning to the original site of the wound, to the emotional age where development was arrested, to complete the process properly. You may feel infantile needs for comfort or experience toddler-like rage. This is the psyche rewinding, the film to the frame where it got stuck. The broken state was a false adulthood built on top of this frozen child. Healing requires you to thaw that child, to feel its unprocessed pain, and to finally provide the conscious, nurturing presence it lacked. This feels worse because you are consciously reliving the most helpless chapters of your story, but this time with the agency to change the ending. Jung observed that the unconscious speaks in symbols, not logic. In your broken state, your symptoms were living symbols of your inner conflict. A frozen shoulder symbolizing a burden, chronic fatigue, symbolizing a lifeless existence. As you heal, these symbols become active in dreams and imagination. You may dream of decaying houses, terrifying chases, or tidal waves. These are not nonsense. They are the psyche's symbolic language for the demolition and reconstruction underway. Engaging with these symbols through active imagination or art is a core Jungian practice. It feels worse before it feels better, because you are no longer just having symptoms. You are consciously dialoguing with the powerful psychic realities they represent. You are moving from being a victim of the symbol to becoming a student of its meaning, which is a more intimate and initially more frightening form of engagement. A major reason healing feels agonizing is the pressure, often internalized, to be better quickly, to stay positive, to find the silver lining. Jung fiercely opposed this bypassing of genuine feeling. He understood that real healing must pass through the authentic experience of negativity, despair, and rage. Forcing premature light onto deep shadow, he warned, only drives the wound deeper into the unconscious. The pain you feel when you reject hollow affirmations and sit in the authentic muck is perversely a sign of health. You are refusing the spiritual shortcut. You are honoring the truth of your experience over the comfort of a pretty lie. This commitment to the real, however dark, is what Jung called the religious attitude, a faithful devotion to the truth of one's own psyche, no matter how terrible its current landscape may appear. Jung proposed that we do not suffer in a vacuum. Our personal pain is often entangled with collective, even ancestral, wounds. As you heal your personal trauma, you may inadvertently tap into this deeper strata of suffering. Feelings of profound grief or rage that seem larger than your own life story may surface. This is the weight of the collective unconscious. It can make your process feel overwhelming, as if you are carrying the sorrows of the world. Your individual healing is becoming a conduit for transpersonal material. This is not a distraction, but an expansion of your work's significance. While daunting, it is a sign you are healing at a profound depth, loosening knots that go beyond your personal biography and touching the universal human condition of pain and its potential for redemption. Jung framed profound psychological change as a sacrificial process. Something must be given up, surrendered, or killed for a new attitude to be born. What you are sacrificing in healing is your old identity, your cherished victim story, your familiar coping strategies, even your hope for a simple, happy ending. This sacrifice feels like a series of deaths. The ego experiences each relinquishment as a catastrophic loss. The pain is the grief of these successive sacrifices. You are mourning the selves you are leaving behind. Jung saw this as a sacred, if brutal, ritual. The comfort of brokenness required no sacrifice, only stagnation. The agony of healing is the cost of the offering you are making on the altar of your own potential. You are not just fixing a problem, you are performing a rites of passage for your own soul. Amidst the unbearable tension of healing, a mysterious Jungian process stirs, the transcendent function. This is the psyche's innate ability to generate a third, reconciling perspective from the clash of opposites, like hope versus despair, or dependency versus isolation. Defunction is transcendent because it leads to a new level of consciousness, but it is born directly in the crucible of your pain. The awful feeling of being torn apart is the very energy that fuels this psychic alchemy. You cannot force it. You can only hold the tension consciously and wait. The new insight, the sudden dream, the shift in perspective that finally brings relief, emerges from this darkness. The pain is not the obstacle to healing. It is the womb. The worst moments are often the contractions preceding the birth of a more capable, nuanced, and resilient you, a synthesis your old, fractured self could never have conceived. Here is Jung's challenging truth. Healing is not a destination with a finish line where pain ceases. It is the beginning of individuation, the lifelong process of becoming the unique, integrated person you are meant to be. The intense phase where healing feels worse is the initiatory crisis, the gateway into this ongoing work. The broken state was a static, if painful, equilibrium. Individuation is a dynamic, never-ending journey that continually asks you to engage with new layers of shadow, new opposites, new calls from the self. The pain transforms from the acute agony of wound exposure to the more manageable, recurring discomfort of growth. You trade the suffering of a prisoner for the demanding, yet liberating labors of a conscious builder. The work does not end, but your relationship to the work and to the pain it entails changes irrevocably. Jung's darkest and most liberating truth is this wholeness is not the absence of pain or darkness. It is the conscious inclusion of them. The healed person is not someone who has escaped their brokenness, but one who has made a home for it within a larger, more compassionate consciousness. The shattered pieces are not discarded. They are reassembled into a mosaic that includes the cracks. As part of its design, the agony of healing is the necessary process of gathering those scattered shards, each one sharp and painful to touch. The comfort of staying broken was the relief of leaving them buried. You feel worse because you are undertaking the sacred, strenuous task of recollection, of gathering all the disowned parts of your soul. The end is not a pristine, pain-free self. It is a complete, authentic self, capable of holding your own darkness without being defined by it. A wholeness forged in the very fire that once threatened to destroy you. The searing truth is that healing feels worse because it is work, the most sacred and demanding labor of your life. Carl Jung's wisdom reveals you are not falling apart, you are breaking open. The numbness of staying broken was a silent prison. The acute pain of healing is the sound of the walls coming down. Every wave of grief, every surge of old anger, every moment of terrifying vulnerability is not a setback. It is evidence of profound excavation. You are consciously metabolizing the poison that once ran silently in your veins. This is the alchemy of the soul, where the lead of your suffering is transformed in the fierce heat of your own awareness. Do not fear the darkness you feel. It is not the enemy. It is the raw material. Your deepest healing is being forged in this very fire, preparing you to emerge not merely repaired, but radically remade.